What you're about to explore isn't about willpower. It's not about suppressing your feelings, pretending everything's fine when it's not, or forcing yourself into a false sense of positivity. It's also not about fighting every negative thought that comes up. Real, lasting inner peace doesn't come from trying to control your emotions or pushing discomfort away. It comes from something much deeper, something often overlooked, because we're taught to look for solutions outside ourselves. But the real shift begins within. Maybe you've noticed how some people move through life with a quiet strength. Even in times of crisis, loss, or uncertainty, they remain calm, centered, and resilient. Others, though, feel overwhelmed, even by the smallest challenges. Why is that? Is it just personality, luck, or is there a deeper principle that separates those who feel grounded from those who feel constantly reactive and trapped in their emotions? Here's where most people misunderstand. We're often taught to believe that reality is fixed, that our emotions are simply reactions to what's happening around us. But that's not quite true. Everything you experience, absolutely everything, is shaped by how you interpret the world. Your beliefs, your past experiences, and the emotions you've never fully processed act like a filter. It's as if you're wearing glasses tinted by fear, guilt, or resentment, coloring everything you see. So even when life offers something neutral or even positive, you might still experience it through a lens of pain or limitation. But here's the powerful truth. It's not about avoiding pain or escaping difficult emotions. It's about changing the way you relate to those experiences. It's about learning to reframe, to shift the meaning you assign to what happens, and to use every emotion as a guide, not a trap. Reality isn't something that just happens to you. It's something you interpret. And when you begin to take ownership of that interpretation, you step into your power. You begin to choose how you respond. That's where real freedom begins. Today, I want to show you how to do this, not with vague ideas or feel-good advice, but with real, grounded principles. The same ones used by people who've cultivated a deep sense of peace that doesn't depend on anything or anyone outside of them. You'll learn how to turn fear into clarity, how to work with your emotions instead of against them, and how to find a lasting calm, no matter what life throws your way. What you're about to understand could change everything, but only if you're willing to turn inward and question what you've long accepted as truth. Because in the end, it's not what happens around you that defines your peace, it's how you choose to experience it. And once you learn to change that, you'll see the world and yourself through new eyes. Imagine your life without the weight of fear, limiting beliefs, or unhealed emotions. Imagine seeing the world clearly and responding with calm, strength, and clarity. That's what we're about to explore together. The human mind is a vast and intricate labyrinth, a place where every thought, every reaction, and every emotion is shaped by deep layers we seldom explore consciously. One of the most insightful thinkers of modern psychology understood this better than most. He described the psyche as an iceberg. What we see, the conscious mind, is only the tip. Beneath the surface lies a much larger realm, the subconscious. This hidden space holds our past experiences, unhealed wounds, insecurities, and, perhaps most importantly, our projections. The parts of ourselves we haven't fully acknowledged don't disappear. Instead, they shape our reality in quiet, powerful ways. What we do not make conscious, Jung said, appears in our lives as fate. Think about how fear shows up in your life, often unnoticed. It appears as self-doubt when you're unsure if you're capable. It wears the mask of procrastination when you're afraid of failure. It influences relationships, leading you to overextend just to avoid being alone. But fear, like all emotions, is not the enemy. It's a signal, a messenger. It tells you there's something within you that's still waiting to be seen, understood, healed. Yet most people, instead of listening to their emotions, try to silence them. We're told to stay strong, to not cry, to suppress anger or sadness. But the truth is, what we resist persists. Unexpressed emotions don't vanish. They settle in, quietly shaping our behavior, our choices, and our sense of peace. They become emotional baggage we carry, heavy, silent, and exhausting. This is how the mind works. Every emotion is like a passing storm. It's not permanent, it's not a punishment, it's a process. Still, many of us stay stuck trying to control what we feel. We distract ourselves through work, entertainment, even relationships that offer temporary comfort, rather than face what truly needs attention. What if you observed your sadness instead of running from it? What if you asked your fear what it's trying to teach you? Because every emotion carries a message. Sadness often means it's time to let go of an expectation, an identity, or a connection that no longer serves you. Fear reveals the beliefs you've internalized, that you're not enough, not worthy, not safe to fail. And anger, far from being something to suppress, is often a sign your boundaries have been crossed, that something vital in you needs protection. When you begin to view emotions as guides rather than obstacles, your relationship with yourself transforms. And as your inner world shifts, so does your outer reality. Think of a moment when you usually react automatically, an argument, a work challenge, a comment that stirs insecurity. Next time, pause, breathe, observe, as if you were watching the scene from the outside. Ask yourself, which part of me is reacting right now? Is it really the situation? Or is it something old, something inside me being triggered? These kinds of questions change everything. Because once you understand that what happens outside only holds power if something inside gives it meaning, you begin to reclaim your inner freedom. Jung spoke of the silent observer, that calm center within you that doesn't get swept away by emotion or chaos. That place remains untouched, always. When you access that part of yourself, you begin to realize nothing and no one can truly destabilize you unless you allow it. Every time something shakes you, it's pointing to an unhealed part of your story. And that's not weakness, it's an opportunity. Peace doesn't come from changing everything around you. It comes from changing the way you experience it. When you understand this, emotional storms no longer feel threatening. They become moments of insight. And if you take an honest look at your thoughts, you might find that many aren't even your own. They were absorbed by culture, by family, by early experiences. You accepted them as truth, but you don't have to keep carrying them. So imagine, for just a moment, that starting today, you begin to rewrite the narrative. Instead of repeating, "I'm not enough," you begin to integrate the truth. You always have been. Have you ever considered that you've always been capable, and that the only thing holding you back is the story you've been telling yourself? Carl Jung taught us something profound. The unconscious mind doesn't distinguish between what is real and what is imagined. It simply responds to the programming we give it. So if you begin feeding your mind beliefs that empower and support you, your outer world will inevitably begin to mirror that change. Let's bring this into a real-life context. Imagine someone who spent their entire life fearing they are unlovable. Maybe they learned early on that love had to be earned, that being accepted meant pleasing others, putting themselves last, and sacrificing their needs for approval. As an adult, that person may carry a deep, quiet belief that they are never enough. They try harder, give more, and still feel the same emptiness. So how do they break free? The first step is awareness, seeing the pattern for what it is. Jung spoke of shadow integration, the process of bringing to light what has been hidden inside us. When this person recognizes that their fear of rejection is rooted in an old wound, not in current reality, they begin to reclaim their power. They start to understand. Their worth is not determined by what others give or withhold. It's defined by how they see themselves. And with that realization, something shifts. They start setting boundaries. They learn to say no, without guilt. They begin to put themselves first, not from selfishness, but from self-respect. And here's the beautiful part. As they change, the people around them begin to respond differently too. They're no longer drawn to for what they offer, but for who they are. That's when the cycle finally breaks. Now consider another example. Someone who has always believed that failure is shameful. Each time they try something and don't succeed, they're flooded with self-criticism. They compare themselves to others. They begin to feel stuck, as if life is always against them. But what happens when they start to see failure differently? What if they begin to understand that failure isn't a verdict? It's part of the journey, that every mistake holds a lesson, and every setback is an opportunity to grow. Jung once said, "Life doesn't happen to you, it happens through you." When this person starts to see each fall not as a punishment, but as a stepping stone, their entire experience of life begins to shift. They stop fearing the outcome because they realize their worth was never about the result. It's about who they become in the process. Here's something most people overlook. Every thought you nurture is a seed. If you keep watering the seeds of fear, resentment, or doubt, they will grow and eventually shape the landscape of your life. But if you choose instead to plant seeds of confidence, peace, and self-trust, you'll begin to see that your reality can change in powerful, tangible ways. And this isn't just an abstract idea. It's something you can experience right now. The next time a limiting thought surfaces, pause. Don't automatically accept it as truth. Observe it. Question it. Ask, does this thought truly belong to me? Or is it an old echo I no longer need to carry? Because when you begin to let go of those inherited stories, when you stop feeding the beliefs that keep you small, you'll realize something deeply freeing. The only power those thoughts ever had was the power you gave them. And now you can choose differently. This is the shift from unconscious reaction to conscious response. It's not that fear disappears completely. It's that you stop letting it control the narrative. You become the observer of your inner world, not the victim of it. You begin to see your emotions, your thoughts, your insecurities, not as truths, but as signals. And once you see them clearly, you can choose how to act. This is empowerment in its purest form. And what begins as a single moment of clarity, a breath before you speak, a pause before you react, slowly becomes a new way of living. Over time, you find yourself less triggered, more grounded. Conversations that once made you anxious now feel manageable. Situations that used to overwhelm you now feel like opportunities for growth. Carl Jung emphasized this process of individuation, of becoming whole by integrating the conscious and unconscious parts of ourselves. That's what you're doing each time you choose to meet fear with curiosity, to meet discomfort with presence. You're reclaiming your inner authority. So the next time you feel small in a room, the next time your voice trembles or your stomach tightens or your mind tells you, you're not enough, remember, that voice is not the truth. It's an old echo, and you are no longer bound to it. Instead, take the breath. Ask the question, what am I telling myself right now? And then remind yourself, I get to choose a new story. This is how change begins, not by waiting for the world to soften, but by becoming stronger within. Not by chasing peace outside of you, but by turning inward and realizing it's been there all along. Peace isn't hidden in a perfect situation, a flawless relationship, or a quiet life. It's found when you stop fighting yourself, when you choose presence over reaction, when you take responsibility for your inner world instead of trying to control the outer one. And in that moment, everything changes. Not because life becomes easier, but because you become wiser. Not because the world suddenly becomes more fair, but because you stop expecting it to meet needs only you can fulfill. This is the heart of emotional maturity. It's realizing that your triggers aren't your enemies, they're your teachers. That your discomfort isn't a curse, it's a compass. That your pain isn't a punishment, it's a portal to deeper self-understanding. True growth doesn't happen when you feel good. It happens when you sit with what's uncomfortable, listen to what it's asking of you, and rise from it with greater clarity and compassion. So the next time you feel the urge to blame, to shut down, to lash out, pause, breathe, return to yourself. Ask, what is this emotion trying to show me? What am I believing right now that may not be true? How can I respond in a way that honors who I am becoming? This is how you reclaim your power, not by changing the people or events in your life, but by becoming so anchored in yourself that nothing outside you can shake your foundation. Because in the end, the peace you seek is not found in escape. It's found in meeting yourself, fully, courageously, and without judgment. And once you've done that, no one, not your past, not your pain, not your fear, can take your peace away again. To individuate is to peel away the layers of conditioning, the stories you've inherited, the fears you've absorbed, and the labels you've accepted as truth. It's to meet the self beneath all that noise. It's not about becoming something new. It's about remembering who you were before the world told you who to be. And this is the final key. You are not broken. You are not too sensitive, too emotional, too weak. You are simply disconnected from the truth of your own power. Every time you question your old narrative, every time you choose presence over reaction, awareness over autopilot, you reconnect, you return. This return to self is the foundation of all healing. It's not an easy journey, confronting your patterns, sitting with your shadows, and breaking free from your identity stories can feel like walking through fire. But that fire doesn't burn you. It burns away what you are not. And what's left is something stronger, truer, freer. So let's bring it all together. You are not your thoughts. You are not your pain. You are not your past. You are the one witnessing all of it. And the moment you realize this, you become unshakable, not because life stops being hard, but because you stop being afraid of it. From this space, you don't just survive, you thrive. You love without attachment. You give without resentment. You speak without fear. You live without apology. This is what Jung meant when he spoke of wholeness. Not perfection, but integration. Not the absence of struggle, but the mastery of self through it. And when you reach that point, when your peace is no longer fragile but foundational, you will know this truth in your bones. The world never had power over you. It was your own mind all along. And now, finally, you are free. It's the journey of becoming your true self, free from the conditioning and expectations of the world around you. And it begins with something simple, but often forgotten: the courage to listen to yourself. We live in a world that constantly tells us how we should think, feel, or act. But pause for a moment. How many times have you silenced what you really wanted, just to avoid disappointing someone else? How often have you buried an emotion because you were taught that feeling too deeply meant you were weak? And how many times have you changed who you are just to fit in? Every time this happens, without even realizing it, we hand over a little more of our inner peace to the external world. But the issue isn't that the world tries to shape us. It always will. The real challenge is when we start drifting away from who we truly are, just to meet those external expectations. That's where the practice of inner stillness becomes so powerful. Carl Jung believed our minds are full of noise, an endless internal dialogue we rarely stop to question. But what if, even for just a few minutes each day, you set everything aside? The phone, the noise, the urge to do something, and simply allowed yourself to be, fully present without distractions. In those quiet moments, clarity begins to surface. You start to recognize how you actually feel, what's been weighing on you, and what your inner voice has been trying to say all along. Imagine someone says something hurtful. In the past, maybe that would have pierced right through you. But now, instead of reacting, you pause. You take a breath, and you ask yourself, do I really need to carry this? Does this reflect something about me or about them? That space between stimulus and response, that's where your freedom lives. Detachment begins to form, not because you don't care, but because you've stopped letting others define your worth. That kind of clarity doesn't come overnight. It's a practice, a process of showing up for yourself again and again, becoming the observer of your emotions rather than being consumed by them. And something incredible happens when you live this way. The outside world begins to shift too. The situations that once overwhelmed you, they lose their weight. The people who once triggered you, they no longer have that power. Most importantly, you start to feel lighter, freer, like you've stepped into a new version of yourself that's been waiting all along. But let's be honest, this doesn't mean you'll never feel pain or frustration or sadness again. Those emotions are still part of the human experience. The difference is, now they no longer define you. They come, they pass, like waves on the surface of the ocean. You learn to ride them instead of resisting them, trusting that the calm always returns. So what can you do right now to begin building that kind of inner strength? Start small. When an intense emotion arises, ask yourself gently, what part of me is being stirred up right now? Not to judge it, but to understand. Let the emotion be there. Breathe with it, and watch how, over time, it begins to soften. Because inner peace isn't something we find in the world around us. It's something we build within, through conscious choices, quiet reflection, and the decision to stop giving our power away. That's what real strength looks like. And once you experience it, everything changes. The world doesn't feel so heavy. You don't feel so controlled. And nothing outside of you can take away the calm you've worked so hard to create. If this message resonated with you and you'd like to keep exploring these ideas, I invite you to subscribe to the channel, tap the notification bell, and share this video with someone who might need it. And if you feel like sharing, drop a comment below with your reflections or suggestions. I'd love to hear from you. Until next time, stay grounded, stay present, and take care of that peace within you.